it's another day and another opportunity to get up, dress up, and show up. And we provide you the inspiration and, of course, insight to help you make informed decisions and get on your day in another beautiful way. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka, and I'm never alone. Jeffrey and Kaycee are here to do justice to your perfect day starter.
I'm just wondering why Kaycee is smiling a lot. So let's start with him.
Let's start with me, right?
So what's the smile about?
The progression, wake up, or get up, dress up, and show up. And I thought about it, you can take it for granted, it's monotonous, but how about we just try to do it in style every day? So get up in style. Dress up in style. It might not be the most expensive, but just, you know, feel yourself and then show up in style. So as I showing up to work this morning, do something different, okay? Maybe, I don't know, I have my ways, so I'm hoping that you can do all of those things in style, just as we're doing the morning brief in style. Forgive me, I'm Kayode Okikolu. So that's why I was smiling. I was just imagining waking up in style, dressing up in style, and stuff.
It could be a lot, but it's also fun. Yeah. When you look at what you're going to do, serving people. So all the late night research and show prep, all of that, you just know that, okay, people are waiting to get direction in terms of information, get an update on something that is going on around the country or within that community, and they will tune in. We don't take it for granted. Let's be very clear. We do not take it for granted that you tune in every day to watch what's going on Channels Television. That's why we are promising, and we always promise, and keep to our promise to ensure that you get the right, balanced, impartial, objective information. I'm Jeffrey, I almost forgot my name.
Well, speaking of style this morning and commitment to service, one thing that is lacking in style, seemingly lacking in style, because it's debatable compared to where you're looking at it from, which part of the country you're looking at it from. But one that may be lacking in style is something that I chanced upon on the internet yesterday. And it's the provision of a constituency project for constituents in a certain part of Kogi. I believe it's Dekina area, a traditional well. I wonder if you saw that yesterday, and you know, it drew the ire of constituents there, and they were saying that it appears as if their representatives do not take them seriously. That how could that be a project that the constituents would be worthy of in the light of, you know, what may have been provided for. And that you know, made me recall the debate on the floor of the House following the revelations by the suspended and now pardoned lawmaker Senator Abdul Ningi about, you know, the amount of the allowances or the constituency allowances that go to lawmakers, some to the tune of 50 billion or 500 billion naira. And, you know, just reason to reflect on what elected representatives think of their constituents and what they think they're deserving of, you know. And some of the defense put forward was that there would be street lights, there would be boreholes, provisions of, you know, meaningful infrastructure, but certainly not traditional wells. Guys.
This debate around constituency projects never ends. I remember there was a lawmaker who was said to have been donating as a constituency project burial items, but he came out to say later on that it was a need on the one hand and it was from his own pocket of sorts. So is that the case with this one yet again? But I think we need to have a deeper conversation about constituency projects. It should not be just in purview of a few. I know the lawmakers will say, I'm not the one in charge. It's the executive. It's all of those MDAs. But we know how these things work, how you essentially influence the budget-making process and say, well, my constituency has to get this. In fact, there was a public showing of that recently in the National Assembly with the lawmaker saying, well, this person got 1 billion naira. I didn't get as much. So we know how it is influenced. But we need to have a holistic conversation. We should not work in silos. You do constituency projects, then the government does its own, state government does its own, and we have projects scattered around. And this is why we're where we are, as I say right now. So we need to go deeper and say, let us have all of those projects domiciled in one spot so we know who to go to, not go to your lawmaker for roads. I mean, where does that happen?
At the end of the day, we always put ourselves in a cycle of being in need, which brings me to my next point. I was watching something on social media on one of the platforms, and I have always been uncomfortable with African leaders converging for a summit in one nation. The United States will call 54 African leaders, will pack their bags, pick a private flight or jet, and head to America. France will call, we will go there. China will call, we will go there. South Korea, Russia will call. It's just, for me, sometimes they say absence just breeds dignity. Just that's why you see royalties don't just show up anywhere and talk anyhow. Everybody should not be able to call African leaders and they show up, no matter who you are. How many of the Western or the global North can the whole Africa even call and they come to? When was the last time you had the global North converge on Africa for anything? But what I'm saying is that we put ourselves as charity cases all the time. We should not be that. Is it cheap? What's the right word? I'm trying to look for the right word.
I think you used it. Maybe you want a synonym.
Maybe you want a local parlance. See finish.
See finish. It just doesn't. We are 54, and our leaders will be converging for one country.
To be fair, Nigeria's president didn't go. The Minister of Foreign Affairs went for this.
But Nigeria was there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, I understand.
So,
but we had about 20-something of African leaders, 25 also African leaders. Even William Ruto, who said he's not going to be showing up as usual, but...
He was a guest recently in the US.
Let's not even go there. That's me. I'm just saying it's not right. I don't think it's right. Just when they call this, we're not that less busy. We have a lot of problem on the continent. We can't be traveling around. How much attraction have we got at the end of the day? Just my own venting,
and
this morning.
Absolutely, go ahead.
How the president is seeking FDIs outside
thank you,
the
Mr.
country.
President, for not traveling, by the way.
Well, Mr. President has traveled some in the last couple of months.
At least he didn't go for this one.
There's been a lot of talk about how Nigeria is seeking FDIs, but companies at home are divesting, and that's some variance that needs to be critically looked into, and there should be rather more work to keep those at home, because those who are going cap in hand begging have a fair understanding of what's happening at home. They're not foolish, and they're going to be making informed decisions about what's on ground at home in terms of a conducive environment to investing before they bring in their investment. So it's a no-brainer, really. If those who are leaving, there's some problem at home. So speaking of what we have for you today, we're looking at politics at the subnational level, which is in our line of vision, as we examine the interesting turn of events in Kaduna State. The State Assembly's committee set up to probe the immediate past administration of former Governor El-Rufai has recommended his investigation and prosecution for a number of offenses tantamount to abuse of office, which, according to them, has plunged Kaduna State into heavy debt. So what does this mean for the political future of Kaduna State? So join us for this conversation today.
That's exactly what we'll be talking about in that particular segment. But that's not all. The debate over an ideal minimum wage for workers is far from over, as the tripartite committee continues its meeting in pursuit of a deal. Amid that debate, government's inability to pay more may not be only a bone of contention, as the private sector is also concerned about a figure that may amount to some level of pressure and a burden on them. So let's get more insight into the private sector perspective on this particular issue, because minimum wage affects both the public and the private sector.
Oh, say that again, Jeffrey. But that's not all. Laughter is good for the soul, and it can be found in the most unexpected places too, even in house hunting gone bad. And a lot of us can testify to that. In fact, that was a major issue for Jeffrey at some point. But our guest on the show this morning, as we feature the softer side of things, is Kaycee, who seems to bear a grudge against rogue estate agents. So you have to wait for it. You're bound to laugh.
And I'm laughing already, thinking about some of his rantings on, very, very, very poorly built homes, that you chance upon when you're going house hunting. But he'll be here to do justice to all of that. We're also keeping a close watch on your reactions to the big stories, so keep them coming. Your questions are also welcome on our WhatsApp number, which will be showing on your screen shortly. Of course, you can also send your videos to that WhatsApp number. So we're set to take your reactions this morning and just reflect on them the way you make us do. So go to X, go to Instagram, go to Facebook. We are live. Your perfect morning starter is unfolding already. We'll be right back with your top stories in just a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back, and starting with the concern about farmer herder crisis, which took center stage at the Senate on Wednesday as the lawmakers passed through second reading a bill for an act to ban open grazing and establish ranches in the country. The passage, however, came with a slightly heated debate among lawmakers, arising from a portion of the bill which proposes that the ranches be established in pastoralist states without forcing it on states that do not have pastoralist communities. The Senate also proposed a national summit on the matter, in addition to a public hearing for a comprehensive solution.
Now is the time to put a permanent stop to the endless cycle of attacks and counterattacks by our people and their external collaborators.
It also means that this is also the time for us to take another look at the law that makes land to be in the hands of states.
The National Livestock Production Scheme was introduced under the Vice President. Everything was packaged, but some states refused.
We cannot resolve this issue if we are sentimental. Going by this bill, it will compound our crisis in Nigeria. Some people close their eyes on what is going on or what lead herders to go against farmers.
Every citizen of Nigeria is entitled to move freely throughout Nigeria and to reside in any part thereof.
The section you are referring to is talking about citizens of Nigeria.
Yes.
And cows are not citizens of Nigeria.
Cows
can come in from Niger, they can come in from Chad, anywhere. But cows are not citizens. So let's go to the public hearing. And I think we should combine the public hearing also with the national dialogue that we had earlier approved.
One huge and divisive topic there, and that's by no means the last that we'll hear about that topic, especially in the coming days. Moving on now, no deal yet. That's the position on the new national minimum wage, as the tripartite committee ended the second day of their meeting without an agreement. This follows the suspension of the industrial action by organized labor. The meeting had in attendance representatives of organized labor, states, and the private sector. In attendance, the President Bola Tinubu had on Wednesday directed the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, to present a financial guide and cost implications for a new minimum wage within 2 days for presentation in subsequent meetings with labor. The House of Representatives is asking the federal government to redirect the focus of its negotiation with labor from fixing a new minimum wage to fixing a realistic living wage. The House is calling for a downward review of the recently increased electricity tariff. These resolutions were reached after the consideration of a motion to avert future industrial actions by organized labor.
Urge government to redirect the focus of negotiations from fixing a new minimum wage to fixing a realistic living wage for Nigerian workers.
I will urge this House to please, with the speed with which we pass the national anthem, that we should also recall the Minimum Wage Act, reconsider it, and with that same speed, pass that act. Where the executive arm refuses to assent, I think that will be the first call on this House for us to override, Mr. President.
We actually have to criminalize the part where we shut down the national grid. Shutting down the national grid is killing the same people we are protecting.
Section 31, subsection 6 of the Trade Union Act, as amended, prohibits workers and their unions from organizing or participating in strikes if they are engaged in the provision of essential services, power, water, or fuel.
I'll suggest the price of one bag of rice is 75,000 today. Let it be the list of negotiating, and now
put into consideration school fees of individuals.
The law of Nigeria recognizes that as a person, you are entitled to 1 wife, 4 children, and then your mother and father. These are the things that you are entitled to take care. Even in the tax relief or whatever, these are the indices and the factors given to us. And so by implication, you are supposed to have that minimum wage that will cater for this number of persons.
In the meantime, the Senate has approved a bill seeking improved salaries, allowances, and fringe benefits for judicial officers in Nigeria by 300% as the bill scales second reading on Wednesday. The approval followed the adoption of the report by the Chairman, Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters, Senator Mohammed Monguno. According to the lawmaker, the increase would allow judicial lawmakers focus on their professional development without worrying about financial constraints. And the ad hoc committee set up by the Kaduna State House of Assembly to investigate all finances, loans and contracts awarded under the former governor Nasir El-Rufai has recommended the investigation and prosecution of the former governor, also to be prosecuted as some other members of his cabinet for the award of contracts without due process, diversion of public funds and money laundering, as well as for plunging Kaduna State into heavy debt. This came to the fore on Wednesday after the committee submitted its report to the State Assembly. The Assembly Speaker, Honorable Yusuf Liman, said a total of 423 billion naira was allegedly siphoned by the El-Rufai administration, leaving the state with huge liabilities. Meanwhile, former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, has described as politically motivated hatchet job the State Assembly's adoption of a report by its ad hoc committee seeking to probe his administration from May 2015 to May 2023. In a statement issued on Wednesday through his spokesperson, Mr. Muyiwa Adikeye, the former governor said he led a government of integrity and competence during his 8-year administration. He said Malam Nasir El-Rufai is immensely proud of his record of governance and the legacy he left in Kaduna State, and such record cannot be altered by any malicious effort to use the auspices of a state legislature for defamation and undeserved smears. And to the court now. The Federal High Court sitting in Lagos on Wednesday granted an interim order of forfeiture of properties valued at 11.14 billion naira linked to the embattled former Central Bank Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele. Justice Chukwujeku Aneke made the order sequel to a motion ex parte filed and argued by the counsel to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Rotimi Oyedepo, who led Bilkisu Buhari Bala and Chineye Okezie in the proceedings. The court ordered the interim forfeiture of the properties to the federal government, and Oyedepo informed the court that Emefiele was suspected of having bought the choice properties by proxy with the proceeds of fraud. The properties are mostly located in highbrow parts of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. And back in the north, the search and rescue efforts have continued at the mining pit, which collapsed on Monday and trapped some miners in Galkago community of Shiroro local government area of the state. The Director Relief and Rehabilitation of the Niger State Emergency Management Agency said a joint rescue operation is ongoing to excavate the over 400-meter-long mining pit, which caved in on the miners, including the site manager, whose name was given as Ibrahim Ishaku. The police commissioner, during his inspection of the mine, said that operators of the collapsed mining site operated without regard to safety measures and the welfare of laborers. The federal government is considering suspending import duty on staple foods, drugs and other essential items for 6 months to slow down inflation in the country. This is contained in an executive order which may also see the government waive levies on fertilizer, poultry feed, flour and grains, and suspend some value-added taxes. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, has said that the government will stop borrowing from the Central Bank of Nigeria through ways and means advances as part of a plan to curb inflation. The document outlining these proposals, according to the international media, has been sent to the president for consideration. And outside our shores, Narendra Modi is on a difficult path to becoming India's Prime Minister for a third time, a day after humbling election results which saw his majority slashed by resurgent opposition. Mr. Modi was back to be Prime Minister again following a meeting with his National Democratic Alliance, NDA, on Wednesday. The 73-year-old had found himself unexpectedly reliant on the NDA's smaller parties to reach a parliamentary majority after his own party fell short of the 272 needed to form the next government. And in sports, Nigeria's women under-20 team, the Falconets, will face former champions Germany, Venezuela and South Korea in Group D at the 2024 FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup in Colombia from August the 31st to August the 22nd. The draw ceremony took place in Bogota, Colombia on Wednesday, with 24 teams set to participate in the competition for the first time. The Falconets have been runners-up twice in the 2010 and 2014 competition, where they suffered an agonizing loss to the Germans. And that does it on the stories making headlines this morning. And it's time now to review some of your thoughts to the major talking points, particularly on social media. And to do just that, Jeffrey joins me. Hi, Jeffrey.
Yeah, Bukola, so a lot of talking points as you've highlighted in your top stories. And we're going to be going straight to some of them. Some has to do with what's going on in Kaduna State as far as the House of Assembly is talking about all the level of indebtedness by the former governor of the state, as well as the debate over open grazing, which is a good place for us to start. So we just want to go straight to your thoughts. So let's begin with this debate. Senate debate over open grazing is still second reading to ban open grazing, I should say. Olatunde A says, if this is passed, it will address the issue with food inflation by 50%. Farmers can then return to their farms.
Well, that's one to think about, particularly when you consider the impact of grazing activities on farmers' property, so to speak. This next one is from Akboidolo Ro, who says, cattle rearing is a private business. They should get ranches and stop grazing. That's what's obtainable everywhere in the world.
There's a lot of debates. Okay, that's not the one. Young Milk, he says, this bill should work across the North only. I repeat, the North only, which was also a part of the contention, because I remember the Deputy Senate President, I think, Jibril, was contesting a provision in the bill that was submitted. He said it should be expunged and redrafted and all of that, that some of the grazers, or some of the herders rather, will, they don't even know where they are from anymore. So people, there was a lot of debate. So we're just giving perspective to some of the things you're putting out here. So, Bukola, I think you have the next one.
Yes, indeed. And this one is from Sen Arohe. And they say some of the owners of these cattle businesses here will oppose this law simply because they don't want to take responsibility for their business, pay for ranches, buy feed for cattle, and not to be feeding freely on the farmers' crops, sell them to consumers, and make your money.
Exactly. So that's another argument, that just like farmers purchase land and cultivate on land, you're moving your cattle or your cows around. It's a private business. Why don't you, because of the clashes we're seeing, why don't you get a space? Do it as a business as well. You know, if you need subvention or intervention or grants, that's a different kettle of fish. Ajuba 101 says, this bill is not supposed to lead to rancor. All dairy farmer needs to do is to have a ranch. Get trucks that brings feeds to the farm and feed the animals. It will make them healthier and fatter. Also, it will offer security to both animals and the herders. Well,
I believe it's just left for the government at the subnational levels to encourage, the herders to see the benefits that are bound in developing ranches. There is a whole value chain worth billions of naira.
Exactly.
Talk about the hides, talk about milk that the cattle herders can profit from, and in fact embrace a sedentary lifestyle rather than,
Yes, there's that part of it again.
So movement.
Well, it's how it's almost a culture to some of them, but now it's causing conflict, so it has to be reviewed some kind of. The Nigerian Senate has also approved a bill that grants 300% salary increase for judicial officers from the CJN down the line, I suppose. So Heavenbound says, congratulations to judicial officers, awaiting increase in minimum wage also.
And this one is from Tafaz, who says, judiciary salary can be increased by 300%, while security salary will remain as it is. Time will come when the military won't take this again. Wow. So it brings us again to that matter of even distribution of resources, the important need for even distribution of resources. But let's go to the next talking point, right?
Yeah, that has to do with that businessman that was accused of being an organ harvester. Andrew Amechi Ocheku is his name. It was actually, the story is that the gentleman invited some girls to his mansion, you know, had some whatever with them, and suddenly the girls could no longer be found. And one thing led to the other. He was arrested, and then there were investigations. He was supposed to be transferred to Abuja for further questioning. On his way, according to report, they say he was shot and killed or so, that he was trying to escape from the police. So it's a lot of stories here and there. So, but the allegation against him is that he's an organ harvester. So this is what you're saying. _Roofman21 with those plenty numbers. Say the love for money and luxury has sent a lot of women to their early grave. How can you meet a man on Facebook and trust him to the extent of traveling all the way to Nigeria? No, they're all in Nigeria, yeah. By the way. All right.
They traveled to Aba, I believe, which is the base of the.
And they were students of a tertiary institution.
Harvester, yes, and indeed there's a
Ghanaian among them.
One Tando, the first name escapes me now. But let's go to the next reaction, which is from Waterside _boy, who says, same old script with how they always entice them. Money, big house, good time. Some watching this will still never learn. Nobody thinks it's ever going to happen to them until it's too late. Having a son that's a cultist and a daughter that's into prostitution, I believe, which is worse. So the social media has its benefits. It also has its really bad downsides, and this is one of it.
I'm happy the next user is also putting the narrative differently, because others are looking at the girls going to do what they call it runs in Nigeria, whatever it is called. But should that qualify them to be killed? It's a no-no. So this user says, a curious city hunter says, we really need to investigate all the so-called business people in this country. Majority of them are not clean. I don't know how you got your data on this particular one, but your points are valid. So those are the stories we've been tracking for you. You've been saying a lot. We can't take all of it. We can't take all of it because we don't have the luxury of time. But we'll take this quick break. When we come back, we'll start our first conversation.
So stay with us again. We'll be right back.
Kaduna State government stayed from 29 May 2015 and 29 May 2023 was 423 billion 115 million and 28,072 naira 88 kobo. The committee found devious transactions, suspicious transactions, diversion. All domestic loans and foreign obtained by the Kaduna State government between 2019 May 2015 to 2019 May 2023 and found by the committee to have been obtained without due process are not binding on the state, and the state government should henceforth stop honoring all obligations arising from them.
It's hard to really rule out that there's a possibility of what we call a drama between the current administration and the previous one in terms of either investigation, political drama, back and forth. And you see this across the country, but we're paying attention to the one that is playing out in Kaduna State, northwest Nigeria. And it's quite interesting and intriguing, really, to see the turn of events. So this morning, we're digging even deeper, and we're joined on the program by a member of the Kaduna State Assembly, which is right in the middle of this investigation. It's Deputy Speaker, Kaduna State House of Assembly, Chairman at a Committee on Investigation of El-Rufai Administration, Sir Henry Danjuma, joins us virtually from Kaduna this morning. Honorable, you're welcome to the Morning Brief.
Very much.
I think it's only fair to begin with the response of the former governor, Nasir El-Rufai. Then we'll, come back to some of the issues raised. And this is a statement which his spokesperson essentially put out yesterday after these allegations and the reports came out. And this is part of what was said, that we're aware of the news that the Kaduna State House of Assembly has adopted the report of the ad hoc committee. It asked to probe the El-Rufai government. Goes on to say that they've not been availed of the report. That's a copy of the report, to which they will respond robustly whenever they obtain it, affirming the integrity of the El-Rufai government and dismissing what they called scandalous claims being aired as the report of the committee. Now, if you skip to the next part of the statement, saying it is sad to see such a shameful departure from any notion of decency and fairness by a state legislature, and dismissing with contempt the claims being peddled in connection with the report. Well, Honorable Danjuma, I imagine that you have seen the reaction of the former governor, Nasir El-Rufai, whom I imagine you know quite well. So speak to the points raised, describing this report and the probe as scandalous, calling it a departure from decency and the rest. How are you responding or receiving that statement before we get into the items on that probe?
I think it is a joke and also laughable for somebody to come over and say what the Kaduna State House of Assembly has done is scandalous and has no justification. We took time to go through the books, and present and past government officials appeared before the committee and gave testimonies. Everything we did in the committee was done objectively, and we also have records available. It's not as if we are speaking from the air. We are speaking with facts. I can assure you, personally, when I go through some of the issues that are bound in the last administration's activities, I was shocked myself. the plethora of loans, foreign and domestic, that were obtained or secured, it's such that nobody can ever imagine. I never ever imagined that a government can be that reckless and go into that kind of, will I say, arrangement. We are elected, people trust us. We're elected to deliver on the dividend of democracy. I hope you note, I hope you should note that once you are elected, it's trust. And trust is a burden. And one must guard that trust jealously and without negotiation. People expect so much from us on this position of trust. And therefore, it is on that basis that we went into the records. In fact, the time given is so short, and it was at the twilight of the investigation that more facts kept revealing, and people are even willing. Even after yesterday, people kept telling us that they are willing to come over to testify, give evidence. So these are realities. These are realities. And I'm sure at the end of the day, by the time the probe and investigation goes further, the reality and the fact will be revealed even the more.
Well, Honorable Danjuma,
I'm not in any way, I do not have any iota of doubt that at the end of the day, who will be at the right side of the coin.
So looking deeper now into the report, the items on it, it's mind-boggling really to see the scale which the committee, can you hear me?
Can you come again?
Yes, I said it's mind-boggling to see the scale of the report really, and let me just take some part of it. It says all commissioners of finance from May 2015 to May 2023 be referred to appropriate law enforcement agencies for thorough investigation. Accountant generals of the state as well from that period. The chairman of Kaduna State IRS from 2018 to 2023. The current commissioner of finance, Kaduna State, step aside. Current chairman of the State Universal Basic Education Board. And the list goes on and on. I even understand that Mr. Muyiwa Adeke, who released the statement, who is a special advisor to the governor at that time, be referred to appropriate law enforcement agency. So this is quite widespread. And one wonders, come on, does that mean that there was no iota of integrity in the previous administration? Is that what this report is saying?
Well, obviously, from what we have found out, the entire administration was padded and saddled on, executive recklessness and all those that we have found or we have commended or recommended to be probed or to be investigated are people that definitely must have colluded in one way or the other into the recklessness that we are accusing the last administration with.
Well, Honorable Danjuma, if you're done with your response, I'd just like to ask, because of especially the weight of allegations, I mean, 423 billion naira was diverted, allegedly diverted, according to the House. So I'd like to ask if at any time the former governor was invited to make a defend himself against these allegations. Perhaps an invitation was published in the newspapers that we somehow lost sight of or that we didn't get wind of. Was he invited?
Well, he was not invited, but I want you to note that those that came before us came with the allegations that all that transpired was under his watch. And there are instances that instructions were given directly by him to contravene some of the laws. And I hope you know that laws are meant, or rules are meant to be obeyed. And because we realized that those that came forward mentioned that he directed that some of the allegations that are being put forward are aided or are directed directly his instructions. Of course, yes, he can't absolve himself from the recklessness that we are accusing the government of.
One more thing, Honorable. The report here says that the former governor authorized the humongous withdrawals of both cash in naira and dollars with no record of utilization and denied the state of the needed development. That's what the report says. But the House spokesman said yesterday that there was no approval of such funds linked to the former governor, but all of those non-approvals, so to speak, and release of funds were linked to his cronies. That seems to be a contradiction. Please clarify.
Well, I hope you know that he's the chief accounting officer, and all this happened under his watch. So how can he absolve himself? How can he absolve himself? And like I told you, those that came before us had testimonies or testified to the effect that he gave directives to some of they were carrying his instructions on some of the issues that we are alleging to have contravened the rules or the laws, or some of the issues we found that trust that is bestowed on a public officer has been breached.
So, Honorable, let's backtrack a bit. You cannot shave a man's head in his absence. So why was he not invited?
Well, whether we invite him or we do not invite him, after all, ours is just to recommend those that will definitely indict, or those that can rule, or those that can say whether or not he is liable, is the court of law. And we feel, first and foremost, that we needed to have those that work under him come before us. And of course, yes, if eventually those that work under him, came before us and said he has directed them to do wrong or directed them to contravene the law, definitely, whether he appeared before us or not, it is only proper that he should answer on these questions.
Before we get to the numbers, it's just morally speaking, it's just fair to have him have it, so to let him have his say, because if you go to social media, that go to the pages of the headlines, it's not the people he instructed that are trending, whose names are all over the place. It's his name, it's his government. He gave all those approval, which is why we keep asking, why was he not? We're not saying investigated necessarily, just for him to be heard from his own part of the story. But let's also find out from you some basic housekeeping before we throw numbers at you. How did you come with this report that you published? Were there auditors involved? Were there accountants? Were there forensic experts? What do you do? How do you defend those numbers?
Those numbers were not booked. Those numbers were not concocted. Those are realities. Those are numbers that we found from the records. I can assure you, the records will always speak for themselves.
Honorable, the reason I asked that question, when he was handing over, before I handed over to Uba Sani, his successor, he had, in his speech, I want to read the 13th paragraph of his speech. He said, as at the last financial year, Kaduna State has the following liabilities: domestic debts, 64.5 billion naira, other contingent liabilities, 16.06 billion, foreign debt, 577.32 billion naira. paragraph 14, it said, we have spent 818.9 billion as capital expenditure between 2015 and 2022 in the prosecution of our first and second state development plan, attracting nearly $5 billion in US, that's $5 billion in foreign and domestic investment that created jobs, improved our tax receipt, and laid a solid foundation for the future. I needed to read what he said when he didn't deny the fact that the state was in huge debt, was indebted. But have you been able to position some of these monies that were spent with projects? Because the allegations as to the fact that 60% of them are not completed. I needed you to speak to this.
Well, I can assure you that between 2015 and 2023, when the last administration took over the reins of governance in Kaduna State, and that was May 2015, and when it exited by May 2023, I can assure you that the monies that came into the state coffers is over 2 trillion naira. If you put both what came in through the FAC, through the IGR, and through those loans and other, like the Paris Club and other, grants, it's over 2 trillion naira. Now, if you juxtapose that which they have gotten vis-a-vis what is on ground, you will see that there's no justification. Right. There's no justification whatsoever. Over 2 trillion naira, and we saw that the projects they claim to have executed is not worth half of what they have gotten. So that is our grouse.
Well, Honorable Danjuma, earlier on when I asked if this implies that there is no iota of, integrity in the previous government, you said, well, yes, that's what this report implies. So let me stretch this further, because we know that in this current government, you have people who are in the previous government, the deputy governor, commissioners, even in your assembly, the state assembly, people who actively participated in the previous government. So does that imply also that there is no iota of integrity in this current government, because you've been able to carry on with some of the people who are in the previous government into this new government?
You can't say that, because even in our report, those that served in the previous government and now that we are alleging that they are found wanting, we recommended they should vacate their office while the investigation continues.
Certainly not all of them, just some of them, Honorable.
If you were in the previous government, and now you are in this government, and we realized that you were part of the recklessness that took place in the last government, definitely you will be called to account. You will definitely be called to account. So that's.
But what happens to the deputy governor, for example?
Well, nobody is above the law. Nobody is above the law.
But the name of a deputy governor is not on this list.
Even if I'm wanting, the law should take its course.
The Commissioner for Internal Affairs.
I've not had a deputy governor being mentioned. So, all through the investigation, I've not had. But if the investigation reveals that she has issues, of course, yes. Like I said, even me, if I'm found wanting, the law should take its course.
Honorable, may I stretch that point a little further? Let me start by recalling some of the things that a House spokesman said yesterday, that, a certain company, 82 million naira was paid to it as interest. And, the ad hoc committee is wondering why the state government will be paying interest to a company for what was done. The spokesman also said that some contractors were awarded contracts and paid over, and some sums were awarded for contracts that were not executed. Some monies, loans were secured from AFDB and Islamic Bank that were never executed. But the question would be, how come the House didn't do due diligence? Because there are 12 returning members from the former assembly. So how come they didn't do due diligence? And how come the deputy speaker who said, the speaker rather, who said his signature was forged on some of those approvals, didn't raise the alarm at the time, and we're only just hearing about it now after the report of the ad hoc committee has come out?
Some of these issues, like the speaker, is not serious of the fact that his signature has been forged, if at all it was forged. He was not serious of the fact until now. So knowledge is power. If you are not aware, or if I am not aware, how can I raise any alarm? All these revelations came after the exit of the last government. So while they were in government, you may not be able to know exactly what is happening. But now that they existed and we went through the books, it is only then that we know that, oh, these are the issues, or these are some of the recklessness that transferred.
But the House has oversight responsibility, particularly on monitoring of contracts. So why didn't it carry out that, monitoring to ascertain whether some contracts were irregularly awarded or not?
The House has always carried out its oversight function. But I want to assure you that if the executive decides to be on the other side, the House has very little it can do. It can be limited to a point that I hope you know that the executive controls both the finances and even the security. So I think to some extent the House, if it does not have the if it does not have the cooperation of the executive, its wings can be clipped, and it can just be issues and trouble all through. And I think during the last administration, that was exactly what transpired.
Honorable, there is a concern raised in your recommendation from his speech that he gave before handing over. He talked about attracting both foreign and domestic investment to the tune of $5 billion and all of that. But you have recommended that between May 29, 2015 to 2023, that all loans obtained by the Kaduna State government, found by the committee have been obtained without due process, are not binding. What will this do to investment or investors coming to Kaduna State? Because you have to look at all sides. Besides prosecuting misappropriation as alleged, you also have to look at how this resonates with investors. So you are now saying that if you didn't follow due process, when you say you didn't follow due process, what do you mean? Is it that it wasn't presented to the House, or what exactly do you mean, and how would this affect investment in Kaduna State?
Due process has to do with the law, and it has to do with whatever it takes to make those loans legal. And if the laws are not observed in the process, because yes, you can always infer that definitely there could be ulterior motives in trying to obtain these loans. And to be honest, of course, yes. Why wouldn't you, if you know you are serving the people, if you know that all that you are doing is to serve the people, of course, you should ensure that all that it takes, all that it takes to ensure that the right thing is done, you go ahead and follow those required laid down procedures. Like I said, rules are meant to be obeyed. And if there are laid down procedures, why would you want to jump them? Except if you have ulterior motives. That's all we're saying.
So the dilemma for a contractor is the fact that, I don't know, a state governor says, look, all these have been sorted with the legislative arm of government. We have a deal, let's sign it, get the work done. And now you're saying it's no longer binding. The state government should no longer honor those obligations, whether they are short-term or long-term, which is the crux of my question, sir.
Well, like I give you an example. Towards the end of the administration, the sum of 20 billion naira was said to be guaranteed by the state government. And the arrangement from a bank, Zenith Bank to be specific, the arrangement was that monies will be collected by the state government on behalf of contractors. Now, the state government, instead of collecting the money or being the debtor directly, they went indirect and said they are guaranteeing the loan. Now, I have never seen where a guarantor is the one that is providing collateral. It is the debtor that should provide collateral. But in this case, it is the guarantor that is providing collateral. And then it is the guarantor that is also responsible for paying the debt. Meanwhile, the money didn't go into the account of the state government. And it is law that all monies, whether loans, grants that are coming or that are for the state, should go into the state account first before they are disbursed. But in this case, a loan was purported to have been guaranteed, and then the money went straight into the account of the debtors. Meanwhile, it is the state that is guaranteeing, it is the guarantor that is providing collateral. And what is this collateral? It is the state internally generated revenue account that was tied with the bank, so that every month that bank can offset I wouldn't say loan. Is it offsetting the guarantee of the loan? I don't understand. How do you see this arrangement? I look at this as a very shabby arrangement. Why don't you ask those that you are guaranteeing this loan to provide the collateral? But it is the state government that is providing the collateral, and it is the state government that is offsetting the loan. Meanwhile, it is a guarantee. It is not a loan to the state government. And so we find this to be definitely wrong and illegal and against the law. And we have recommended that the state government should not honor that transaction.
All right. Okay. Honorable Danjuma, I'd like you to see something, because we're also curious as to what happens next. But about the current governor and the former governor, we know the relationship which they seem to have had. And this is a post on Twitter at that time that the current governor put up, calling Governor El-Rufai a long-standing friend, dependable political ally, whom he has continued to drink from his fountain of knowledge and wisdom. And he goes on to say that Kaduna State and indeed Nigeria are lucky to have such a highly innovative, resourceful and patriotic personality whose only motivation in life is the advancement of the condition of the common people. With Governor El-Rufai, Kaduna State is in safe hands. Governor Obasanjo, now Governor Obasanjo, said at that time. And I wonder if his long-standing ally, friend, someone that says, his own major concern is the advancement of the condition of the people, says Kaduna State is proud to have him and all of that. Is he happy with this current probe? Does he still hold this view? Because I imagine if he said this then, has that changed now?
I wouldn't say that has changed. I hope you know that over 2 million people came to vote Governor Obasanjo and to entrust the mandate in his hands. As far as I'm concerned, Governor Obasanjo is only trying to render his stewardship to the people. The personal cordial relationship with Malam El-Rufai, as far as I'm concerned, still remains.
So he's happy with this probe?
His stewardship to the people, he has to account.
So he's happy? Is he happy with this probe?
the governor will definitely be happy because he has to, render his stewardship to the people that elected him. Right. If his friend is not wanting, his friends will come over and answer.
All right.
I hope if everybody will stand on his own. So,
well, Honorable, we have to anchor at this point because of time, but you've provided some insight. So does that mean that former Governor El-Rufai will need to appear before who now? Who's probing this?
Sorry?
Governor El-Rufai, after all of this has come out, Governor El-Rufai and the former commissioners and others, who will they need to appear before? Who should they report to now?
If they are invited by the law enforcement agencies, they will go there.
So that's the police, I imagine.
It could be the police, it could be the EFCC, it could be the ICC, and any other agency that is responsible with.
Okay, so you've not lodged these allegations before any of the law enforcement agencies.
Only recommended to the governor.
Okay.
To take further. It is within his.
All right.
Discretion and jurisdiction.
All right. Just to be clear, I would like to thank you so much, Honorable Henry Danjuma, the Deputy Speaker, Kaduna State House of Assembly, also Chairman, Ad hoc Committee on Investigation of El-Rufai Administration, Kaduna State Assembly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, we'll take a moment now on the show. Well, we'll wait to see what the El-Rufai camp says after this. They had released a statement which we put out. But of course, we see what comes up next. But we'll take a moment now and talk about how this minimum wage debate and conversation concerns you as an employee and employer in the private sector. Stay with us.
Members of the Tripartite Committee on National Minimum Wage, comprising representatives of the organized labor, the private sector, the federal and state government, as well as the head of service of the Federation, arrived at the venue of the meeting in Abuja. This is the second meeting of the committee after the suspension of the strike. After about 3 hours behind this closed door, the meeting ends and some of the representatives brief journalists on the outcome.
After the meeting of yesterday, we adjourned to today. We just had a meeting at 12 again, but there is nothing presented yet. That's the reality of where we are. You could see that the Minister of Finance and the Minister of the Economy left even much more earlier than us. They said they are still working on the template that the President mandated them to work on. So they've not presented anything. All we were discussing was just the principles around some of these issues. But the real figure on where we are, they've not presented anything.
We do not want to keep Nigeria gazing and then sleeping and not relaxing. So I believe that we will be able to do that. What is it? We are brothers, we are sisters, and then we are in one community, Nigerian project. So I don't think we'll go beyond the deadline.
The Tripartite Committee has failed to reach an agreement for a new minimum wage after 7 meetings before the nationwide strike was declared on Monday by the Workers' Union. The organized labor insisted on 497,000 naira minimum wage for workers as against the 60,000 naira that the private sector, the federal and state governments are proposing.
Let's continue the conversation, the money talks, but this time we're talking about the issue of minimum wage. There has not been an agreement yet. Of course, the SGF has said that the committee will continue to meet for 1 week to come up with a deal. The president has directed the finance minister to come up with a minimum wage template. And so we're looking at all the documents. We've seen a draft of that document and some of the shortfalls, challenges, vision board, and how to accomplish some of those vision from the finance minister. But how does all of this affect people in the private sector, which is why it's called a tripartite committee? So the private, labor, as well as the government. We're being joined in the program by the Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, and a member of the ILO Governing Board, Mr. Adewale Smart Oyerinde, joins us via Zoom. Mr. Oyerinde, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having us. Good morning.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand you had said that if government succumbs to Labour's demand of over 400,000 naira as minimum wage, which some people are saying is way over the top, it will cripple the economy. Some Labour people say, do you think we don't deserve this money? So maybe you explain that, if that is correct.
Thank you very much. I think where you started from is quite apt, because that is the foundation of this conversation, and it's also very important to correct the misconception that is out there in the public. What the committee was inaugurated to do was to recommend a new national minimum wage. We are not to negotiate salary increases. We are not to negotiate new salaries. It was a new national minimum wage, the amount below which no employer in the private or public sector should pay. Other fundamental issues like cost of living adjustment and so many issues about welfare and the rest, most times they are negotiated at the sectoral level. It's very important we get this right. The sectoral level, where we have industrial unions and industrial employer federations. At that level, some meet every year to negotiate new collective bargaining agreements. Some meet every 2 years to negotiate new collective bargaining agreement, and some meet 3 years to negotiate key issues around cost of living adjustment, COLA, around welfare issues. That happens at that sectoral level. What this specific committee was inaugurated to recommend is a new national minimum wage. Now, is 415,000 or even 615,000, is it okay? Absolutely, it is okay. If the economy and if those that will pay it can carry the burden. I call it a burden, not because the employees do not deserve it, but because the moment it becomes a path towards fatality for those that will pay it, then it becomes a burden. For the private sector, which I will likely focus on, the critical issues that the private sector faces, we all know it. It's there for everybody to see. The multiplicity of taxes that we've mentioned over time. When we mention private sector pays over 60 different taxes, levies, and fees per annum, people think it's just statistics. What we should ask ourselves is, why will many organizations, many businesses be either closing shop or relocating or changing their mode of operation? Why would that be happening if they can't survive? Some have said it is not only wages that causes those businesses to leave. Absolutely, not only wages, but the circumstantial factors surrounding each business compromises its ability to do certain things, and which is part of the issue of these wage issues. We have committed to the issue of national minimum wage. We are absolutely committed to review the new national minimum wage, because it is time to do it according to the law. Are we also committed to the issue of a living wage? Employers, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, even at the global level in ILO here, there is an agreement between the workers' body and the employers' body that yet it is time for us to start talking about a living wage. But there must be a framework for us to discuss this living wage. That framework was approved in the March governing body meeting of the ILO, that the tripartite should start that conversation. So what we are negotiating, or what we are to recommend to the president, is a minimum wage, below which, some have called it the floor wage, below which nobody can pay. For the private sector, it is there for everybody to see. The challenges are there. The risks that we face are there. In the last one month, we've also faced the issue of the new electricity tariff. Those are part of the issues that people don't factor in. And lastly, for my opening comment, it will also surprise you that currently Most private sector organizations, they put all their employees on HMO, the Earth Management Services, which covers the employee, the wife, and 4 children. We currently do that in the organized private sector. Every organized private sector organization also pays 10% of the employees' salary for pension. We pay 1% of payroll to NSITF to take care of injuries arising during or in the course of work for the employee. We pay 1% to ITF for the training of our staff. We pay so many of those levies that we pay on a monthly basis. Let's factor it into this conversation of minimum wage. And lastly, we've discussed minimum wage for over 4 months. And quite unfortunately, the issue of productivity has not really factored in. I think it's time we focus on a minimum wage that is basically minimum. Every employer can pay above it. Those state governments have declared 70,000 minimum wage. It doesn't mean they will come down if what is eventually recommended is below 70. We have employers in the private sector currently paying far above the 60,000. It all boils down to the ability to pay.
All right, and that's where I was planning to take off from, the fact that some employers in the private sector are already paying above the minimum wage. But that makes it curious to learn that the first offer of the private sector during negotiations was 57 naira against the federal government's initial 54,000 naira. I'm wondering why that is, or if that's what private sector employers are paying currently as minimum wage. And really, what would be an ideal living wage in the thinking of private sector employers amid these negotiations? What's practical against the backdrop of the current economic indicators?
Now, first, the private sector offered 54,000. The government offered 48. Then in the course of the conversation, we had consultation with sectoral executives, sectoral groups. We upped the figure to 57. And then before we landed on 60, and the federal government matched our figure. Now, I also want us to be guided, on this issue, on this conversation about living wage. We are not talking living wage; it is minimum wage that we are discussing. And conversation for a living wage, as I said, we are open to it. Employers at the local and the global level are open to that conversation because every worker deserves a living wage. But for this conversation that we're having, and for the purpose of the law that we are supposed to review, the ongoing conversation is a minimum wage, the below which no employer should pay. Now, you mentioned the issue of some employers paying above the current recommendation, and that is absolutely true. Now, if you look at the industrial groups, you have the food and beverages, you have the oil and gas, you have the chemical and non-metallic, you have shop and distributive, over 20, 30 different sectoral groups. Now, at those sectoral groups, many of them have their own minimum wage at the sector level, because I said collective bargaining goes on at those sectoral levels every year, most times in the oil and gas. In the food and beverages and some others, they negotiate every 2 years. In some others, they negotiate every 3 years. So progressively, every 2 years, every 3 years, they negotiate terms and conditions of employment. They negotiate their own minimum wage. So some are quite far above our current proposal, and some are also far behind. So what the private sector did was to look at what exactly is the whole figure that everybody is paying, from the highest payer to the lowest payer. Some companies in the private sector are paying 35,000 when it was 30, some are paying 40,000, some are paying 45,000. Now look at the whole sector, what everybody is paying. And statistically, you try and get the mean, you try and get the mode. Now, the fourth quartile will be those paying highest because they could pay. Now, the middle quartile, what they call median, is probably the figure in the middle. And now we are looking at the minimum so that you don't put much pressure on those that could not pay and you don't destroy them. That way we'll be cutting our nose to spite our face. Now you look at what is the band between the first quartile and the second quartile. That is where the minimum
actually falls in. So that those below the minimum, you can get them to move up. So what our recommended, our proposal of minimum should be, and that is where the 45,000, 54,000 fell into. Because the risk is this. If you go beyond what should be the minimum, what the minimum proposal should be, then you have set up yourself for two critical issues. One, those that could not meet up will probably pack up, and then your rate of unemployment will increase. That is one. Two, you're also setting up yourself for a high level of non-compliance.
Right.
Because the committee will have recommended, completed its assignment, leave the table, then we start dealing with the issue of non-compliance.
Okay.
The biggest victory we can win in this conversation is to ensure compliance. Because even when it was 30,000, many state governors were not paying 30,000. So the biggest victory for us will be ensuring compliance.
Mr. Oyenride, just to be clear, so again, to put the facts out there, now that they're negotiating above 60,000 naira, is the private sector also following suit? Are you in support of this beyond the 54,000 naira, just to be clear?
Now, we have asked the committee because it was government that made the commitment.
Right.
It was between government and organized labor. They've come up with the agreement that government will pay above 60. So what we are asking is, what exactly does it mean? Where exactly does it leave us? If the bipartite is agreeing, there's no problem with the agreement. There's no problem with the commitment. It's within the right of government to meet labor. It's also within the right of government to meet the employers to say, okay, this is what we want to consider. These are the concessions that we are going to give. So it is within the right of government. But we are waiting for government to share what exactly are they offering to enable us also go back to our constituents. We have the constituent of the private sector to also go back to, and this is what government have said, and then we get the mandate from the organized private sector for us to cross the bridge when we eventually get there. But for now, no figure has been touted.
Right, but did you at least climb up to the 60,000 level with government at that point? Just to be clear. Okay, so
at this point we are 60,000. We've over 60,000 painfully.
Right. Just quickly, pardon me, Mr. Oyenride. So when you talk about the minimum wage and the living wage, this debate was also put up at the National Assembly yesterday, saying instead of talking minimum, let's talk living. Please, what is, if 60,000 naira is a minimum wage, so what should be a living wage? So we're clear on this one.
That is part of the confusion. And with due respect to the National Assembly, this pattern of shortcutting a process, it's quite worrisome to us. There is a process of setting a national minimum wage. It is not done through political intervention. It is not done. You create problems. There's a process. The National Minimum Wage Committee is to meet and make a recommendation to the president. We don't necessarily have to agree. It's the reality of it. And so we don't model all these things up. We don't necessarily have to agree. We have to meet and then send a recommendation to the president. The president and commander-in-chief has the prerogative, the sole prerogative, to approve whatever is recommended or not to approve it. It's as simple as that. The buck rests on the table of the president. So with highest respect to the office of the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, calling a party to discuss an issue that is handled by the tripartite, look, it's not subjected to the tripartite. While those issues are allowable, you can consult, but we urge that let this process, this particular process, let it follow its course to the point where the committee will make its recommendation. We have to make a recommendation. We all don't have to necessarily agree, basically.
All right, Mr. Oyenride, I wanted to find out because one thing has been missing in this whole debate, and the only people that have actually given us some data to play with is organized labor, which is how they landed at 615, and they're coming down to over 400,000. So for the private sector that made that initial proposal and is still at 60 where the government is, what are the variables that were considered? What are the variables here?
I just shared the variables with you. We are looking at the minimum. So you collect all the figures from all the sectors. In the sector that is paying 35,
the sector that is paying 40, the sector that is paying 55, the sector that is paying 70. You bring all those figures together. You look for the average, you look for the mode, and you look for you walk through the quartiles and get where the minimum should be. Even the figure that was presented, the analysis you presented, there was a component that was health, health for the employee. For us, these are the issues. The employer currently takes care of the health, the HMO for the employee, taking care of the employee, the wife, and then 4 children. And again, we are talking of minimum wage. Our strong view is this: if minimum wage is the lowest that an individual should earn, the lowest for the most vulnerable employee, now the variable of productivity, the variable of skill, the variable of competence should be a critical factor in shaping the direction of where the wage should go. Start at minimum. We're not bringing the issue of productivity to the issue. We are just talking of apportioning wage now. Labour brought the list of their analysis, but they did not bring, and you did not ask, what is the productivity quotient in this? So we should just look at this issue holistically and address those issues. Our point remains this: it is the minimum for the most vulnerable worker. It is not the maximum. Those that can pay 100 can pay 100. Those that can pay 150 as minimum wage, they are free to pay. But this figure is to protect the most vulnerable worker, so that no employer exploits immoral.
It's a great point you made, but it sounds more like an aggregation of arithmetic than looking at reflecting current economic reality or progressive economic reality for some people that are listening. Don't you think so?
Now, it would be unfair for you to look at those economic realities from one perspective. We have mentioned the issue of inflation rate affecting the disposable income of an average Nigerian. But you have not mentioned the interest rates. A business that borrowed money, that collected a loan from a bank at 5 or 7%. Now interest rate is how much? It's over 2 digits. But we're not addressing the reality for that business. The forex, a business that collected forex when it was 800, and he asked now to repay when it was 1,004. We're not addressing the realities of that business, and you're also not addressing the reality of those that have lost their jobs. The reality of Nigerians that have lost their jobs through the businesses that have closed shop. We're not addressing the realities for them. We're addressing one part of the realities. We have to bring all those realities to the plate. GSK has left Nigeria, Sanofi have left Nigeria, many other businesses are leaving Nigeria. What happened to the employees of those businesses? Everybody is quiet. Are they not Nigerians? Those are the issues. So we have to bring all these issues, bring it to the port, and I think that's what the committee is trying to do now. Let's look at all these issues. We're all Nigerians. Nobody is trying to exploit anybody, but let's create an environment that is conducive for the organized private sector to operate, and we have communicated this to government. And then when the situation for all of us continue to improve, then we're in a better position to discuss the issue of living wage. But for now, we are discussing minimum wage. And when the ILO, which is the father or the grandfather of this whole concept of minimum wage, when we agree on the framework for living wage, then all of us can turn back and then use that framework. Because now, if you ask 100 persons to define what was the context of living wage, you probably will have 100 different contexts to what a living wage should be. But the ILO has given us a parameter for a minimum wage, and we're a strong constituent of the ILO. So that process I've started to come up with a framework for a living wage. So let's wait till that framework is completed, then we can start that conversation at the highest level. But I must re-emphasize this. At the sectoral level, negotiation on improved term and condition of employment, negotiation on cost of living adjustment, it goes on every year, every 2 years, and every 3 years. And also at the private sector, through the instrumentality of appraisers in an annual basis, businesses will still increase salaries by 10, 15, 20% every year through the instrumentality of performance appraisal.
And Labour is also taking into cognizance the productivity quotient that you talk about, and perhaps that's why they have said repeatedly amid negotiations that they are not particularly focused on volume but on value, and by extension they're calling on government to guarantee that whatever figure is agreed upon, the economic indicators would be able to in the long term sustain it. And that leads me to my next question. Is government also listening to the yearnings of the private sector to the extent that they are providing assurances that the business environment would be one that will guarantee your ability, the employer's ability to be able to pay whatever wage that is agreed upon? That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, it appears as if there's an emerging consensus on a figure or figures between 90 and 100,000. You're saying that if, in the final analysis, it will be dependent on the ability, the unique ability of each employer will be to pay. But the minimum wage negotiations would eventually end up becoming law. Would those not paying after it becomes law not be in breach of the law?
Thank you very much. First, on the issue of the economy, unfortunately, employers cannot, they can't go on strike because we have to keep working so that the employees can be at work, basically. Now, I think we've consistently engaged government on the need to quickly address the macroeconomic issues. Because on the long run, the whole conversation rests on the economy. If we agree on, or if there is a recommendation of 1 million naira as minimum wage, if the economy is not strong enough, the 1 million that you have collected will be made nonsense of by the cost of living, by the high cost of living. Because the kind of environment we run in our country, once the minimum wage is announced, the market woman will increase the cost of selling tomato. The landlord will also increase, marginally increase the cost of rent. So what you think you have gained, you probably lose it. So everything rests on the economy. You know, the government must do whatever is necessary, and urgently also to address all the macroeconomic issues that we have. If the macroeconomic indices are strong, then even if you arrive at 20,000 minimum wage or 30,000 maximum wage, the value of that 20 or 30,000 will be sufficient to take care of your needs so that the agitation will be less. That is one part of this. So a lot rests on government, and we've continuously advocated to government on the need and what exactly to do in order of priorities. The second part is the issue of there is a I can't remember what you call it now, consensus. I'm struggling to understand the context of the consensus, because this is a tripartite. So any consensus out of the tripartite, it remains, is allowable, is desirable, but on the long run, it's going to come back to the issue of the tripartite making a recommendation. And what we are trying to avoid is this, and we have communicated to all stakeholders. You might agree on a figure. We also have the instruments, the strong instruments to monitor and to enforce. Now, every employee from the 2019 law, if you are dissatisfied, if you see your employer is not paying, you can approach either individually or as group, approach the National Industrial Court. Now,
well, Mr. Eride, I wonder what will then become of your job eventually if you approach the industrial courts. But
let me create this scenario for you.
Okay, we're winding down, but we need to put in two questions, but you can quickly land on that. Quick.
No, let me create this scenario. You have employers, either at the state or federal level, that couldn't pay. Then everybody now approaches the National Industrial Court. You have 10, 15, 100, 20, 300 cases at the different jurisdiction of the Industrial Court. Those cases will also take about 3 or 4 or 5 years before the judges will dispense with all those cases. You just created a rigmarole, a sequence of negative events that will not end. So, as I said, the biggest win we can get from this process is a commitment to compliance.
All right.
The state government,
so let's wind down on this.
Federal government, on the private sector.
So let's wind down on this, Mr. Eride. What is the chunk that private sector employs in Nigeria's employment sector, if I call it, the employment population? What is the percentage that the private sector is taking on? Do you have those figures?
Well, I'm unable to give you the exact figure, but hypothetically, I can share this with you. And it's globally accepted, global consensus, that for every 10 jobs created, the private sector creates 8 of them.
Okay, so hypothetically speaking, 80%.
The substantial, and those substantial part of the jobs are created by the SMEs. And those are another conversation that we are discussing, because the SMEs are also in a pilot state now. So if you also create a situation for the SMEs that will not enable them to survive, to be sustainable, not competitive now, to be sustainable.
Right, we understand that point, Mr. Onyenrede.
We're also creating different.
And I think it's a vital part of the conversation to have. But just to wind down, on a final note, for people who work in the private sector, who have been following this debate and the negotiation, and they were happy when the strike was called because they're like, at least someone is fighting for us. Are you saying they should not keep their hopes high, just in case, like this might not affect them?
In 1 minute, I'll share this with you. During COVID...
No, it's a yes or no, Mr. Onyenrede, then you can share it. Should they keep their hopes high or just maintain status quo?
There's nothing, they should be hopeful.
You can share the story, Mr. Onyenrede, quickly.
During COVID, when businesses were not working and employees were forced to stay at home, organized businesses rose up responsibly to continue to pay salaries. In fact, we had an MOU with organized labor that private sector will not retrench any worker during that period, and we are responsible enough to keep to that MOU. We were responsible enough to ensure that even welfare issues were addressed. Even when subsidy was removed, we were the first to change mode of businesses, mode of our operations. We went to hybrid. Businesses come up with different palliatives for their employees. Those were good times. But now, if you look, the circumstances is different. Everybody, we all have to make definitive sacrifices. And if you are going to take any action whatsoever that might compromise the faith or the survival of the business, then the organized businesses also will do everything that is necessary to protect its survival. We have laws here. We have laws, we have provisions that have been made in the law to guide our actions and inactions. So we just urge all of us to be law-abiding and to respect constituted authority, irrespective of our personal dispositions.
All right. Ms. Ayorinde, we must thank you for coming on the program. Adewale Smart Ayorinde is Director General of Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, also a member of ILO governing board. Thank you so much. It's day 3 into that negotiation. We hope that by day 5, we'll not go back to what happened on Monday. Hopefully. But we wish you the very best. Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
All right, so we'll take a quick break. We've been talking a lot of serious things from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Come on, let's take it easy at some point and just chill and relax. That's why we brought in somebody whose job it is to make you smile and laugh. It will happen after this break. Join us again.
I assure you there's more laughter to come. So what better time than now to relax our nerves? Maybe not necessarily loosen the tie yet or remove the cap, but it's a good time to laugh. So let's welcome together digital creator, content creator, comedian, Kaycee Kingsley Igombo. Good morning and welcome.
So nice to be here. It's like people are not in this Nigeria. You are just so sweet, smiling. Are we all buying food at the same amount?
We buy more.
But it's so nice to be here. Very wonderful place. Daddy, I made it on channels. Proud moment.
Yeah. And we're proud to have you too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in a space that you're thinking is increasingly narrowing for real jokes, for niche in the comedy space, we have you. And so I'm wondering, I've been trying to, you know, find details on your journey, and I've not been able to get that much of information. So tell us, everyone has a story. Tell us about Kaycee, the comedian.
Oh, thank you very much. First, I'm an accountant by profession.
What?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm an accountant, a master's degree holder from University of Lagos, marketing major.
Wow.
Yeah, so stand-up comedy is an elite art form. Yeah, it's an elite art form, and it's not for...
Elite art form?
Yeah.
Wow.
It takes a certain level of intelligence to do stand-up.
I concur.
Stand-up is one of the hardest part of art, because it's live. There is no cut, there is no edit. We call it firing squad. As you are giving your joke, you're getting the feedback. So there is no cut and join, there is no editing. So when you finish as a stand-up comedian, you don't ask people, how was my performance?
Your results is there.
You see them.
You get 0 over 10.
You see them. You see them. So I started while I was in the university. I had a trauma group in my fellowship. So from there, you know, started getting jokes here and there, and you started putting it together. And it starts from my group of friends. Like, if something happens on campus and I come and give you the gist, you would think I will have added all the condiment. I didn't know I was adding. You know, you're doing something, but because you are not skilled in it, you don't know what you're doing. Right. So, but with time, with working with experienced comedians, watching other comedians perform, learning through the ranks, and I've come to become a better stand-up comedian, and I'm so happy about that.
And one with a unique, a niche also. It seems as if you've been had done by estate agents before.
See, Lagos agents every year, Lagos agents, they plan that how many people are we going to kill looking for house. So they will not decide 50,000 people will die this year looking for house. Because the thing about Lagos agent, you know, Mr. Okiki, you know what you are looking for as a house. You know. But Lagos agent know what they want. You understand?
And the necessary don't.
No, when you tell an agent, I'm looking for a room and a parlor, he will tell your guy, you don't need that. You don't need. I know what I will give you. And once they tell you pay and parking, run. They've not done the foundation. So that is how Lagos agent. And the thing about Lagos is, because the population is high, everybody is looking for house. So, and my friend, they gave my friend house. Toilet, kitchen, and bedroom was in the same space. No way. You know the funny thing, the agent say, calm down. Now me choose them. Once you use the toilet, you bath, you eat, you go out. And it makes sense. So for everything you want, they have explanation for you, you understand? My friend said he was looking for a house in a serene environment. They took him to Aton Cemetery. They said very serene, no noise. Just unpack.
Your neighbors don't make noise.
Lagos agents are...
Wait, is it inside Aton Cemetery?
Inside. They say, just stay here. You don't need to pay agency and damages. You understand? Just lie down and sleep. You understand? And the thing about agents in Lagos, you must try as much as possible to get an agent that is experienced, that is a professional. Don't get roadside agent, because those roadside agents, they are like multi-level marketers. This one will give you the number. This one will give you the number. By the time you get to the house, they've taken it, because it's like 7 people on one property. You understand? They were showing my friend. By the time my friend get to the house, the person that took it has already packed out. You understand? So they have to start looking for the house again. You understand? So that's how it is. The thing is, I had an experience. It was an experience I had while I was looking for a house on budget as a single man. You know, I'm just starting life. And now, you know, when you want to look for a house in Lagos, you start with pride.
Right?
Yes, you
have that
when I really got married, I was like, and I called my agents. As I'm looking for something in the heart of Lekki, and I was speaking English like you people. Something in the heart of Lekki, I want my master bedroom to be facing the ocean. You understand? I like good things. So. Even though there is no more, but I like it. You understand? I want the dining area. I want where I can park 2 cars. You understand? You understand? The guy now asks me how much is my budget. I say everything. Everything plus damages, everything. Let's be looking at 650,000.
You cost it.
the way you laughed, that was the way the agent laughed. He said they will arrest you tomorrow. So I now, you know when they give you price, that is when your taste will start reducing. So I now asked the agent, like, what can I get with this, my brief? How much? He said 7 million. I was like, there's nothing really in Lekki.
True. When you think about it.
They don't really have water. Can you move closer?
You change your story?
Yeah. As I'm speaking to you, I'm staying somewhere on the mainland. Somewhere.
Tell us, please.
It shares boundary with Ogun State.
Be more specific.
Yeah. Like, if you take jetty from that place, it's 30 minutes to Island. It's not far.
Go deeper.
You can call it Ikorodu, something like that. But it's in between.
You know, it's quite interesting when you say comedy is an elite art form.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this a lot. Yeah. I respect comedians.
Yeah.
I sit down and I watch comedians and I'm like, this is not easy. They don't, I don't know if, maybe you do get a lot of, you know, credit for the work you do. Maybe not as much, but I think that comedians should get much more credit for what they do.
For my genre, which is stand-up, we are getting that because a lot of comedy clubs have started opening. Because comedy clubs are like our studios. That is where we go try out new materials. That is where we go try out new jokes for our big stage. You understand? And people don't know that a joke can take you 5 years, 10 years to create. One of my colleagues, XK, taped, he has a special on Netflix now. The material he did for his last special was, he curated those materials for over 4 years. A 1 hour special. So it's a whole lot of work that go into stand-up. Like, my wife didn't know what stand-up was all about. When we got married, I'll be rehearsing at night. I was like, on the rehearse. Wow. So you just take mic and start. I say, no, there is a science to it. There is a science to how you do it. Every stage is different. I can come to a show now and the whole atmosphere is different. All the routine I've written cannot work. I have to start writing, observing, checking what will work here and there, start editing. That's the whole, and all these things I'm telling you are within seconds, and you still have to come and deliver.
It's amazing. I totally agree that a comedy demands a level of intelligence because your observation has to be apt for you to be able to represent. So, in a most patriotic form, we've been through a lot as a country. What is funny about Nigeria?
Oh, Nigeria is funny. If not because of comedy, I'm not sure we'll be alive. And we have a way of, we've used comedy as a coping mechanism. If something happened, no matter how bad it is, we're going to throw the humor part of it. It's a blessing in disguise somehow, but also as an individual, like, can we just face this thing and let's know, you understand what I'm saying? But sometimes you have to bring out humor out of pain. Like humor is humor. You have to laugh about everything. I laugh about my condition. I laugh about everything. I used to work before. Until motivational speaker told me that I'm bigger than my salary. You understand? That's how I lost my job. How I was not, you know, if you don't have work, everybody in your area know. I didn't go to work for 2 days. My neighbor called me, Kaycee, you didn't go to work. I said, I'm on leave. He said, no problem, we are counting it. You understand? And it's when you don't have work, everybody in your compound will be sending you a message. I was at home, my neighbor called me, it's like weather is changing, help me to pack my clothes. You know, it can be painful.
It is painful.
Your neighbors will be calling, my children just closed from school, help me to pick them. And you know those small children that God will judge. Uncle Kaycee always at home. You understand? These are my pains. You are laughing. You understand?
So when you presented it to
you understand? They will not say, "Help me to cook indomie." My mother said, "You should not put salt inside." They ate it. They have running stomach. It's not my fault. You understand? So comedy. You have to, even with this new minimum wage. You understand? My wife is telling me that, you see, they want to increase minimum wage. You need to. You understand? I say, do you work for government or are we working? You understand? So you have to find a way of bringing humor out of every condition. And especially now, we need the humor in Nigeria to go through these trying times and we come out as a nation.
I'm trying to survive this kind.
And it doesn't look it. So
it's hard to believe that you're an accountant.
So the funny thing about people don't believe I'm a comedian. That if they see me until I get on stage, I like that element of surprise. Like I like that element.
You look very corporate.
Yeah, I look. I've worked in a corporate organization. I've worked in an insurance industry.
But you didn't cooperate, obviously.
Nigerians are the worst people to sell insurance to. When you tell them that I sell insurance, so when you die, once they hear when you die, so what will happen? You understand? There was one man that was paying premium. He got to he said, "Can I just die and wake up? Let me just collect this." You understand?
Makes sense.
You understand? So Nigerians are worst people to sell insurance to, because anything that concerns death, we don't want to hear it. You understand? So that's how we do it.
You know, hard as the job is, you make it look so easy. You know, I've been trying to control myself and get my next question across. And which brings me to this, about how it comes naturally to you as against the hard work involved. Because sometimes you see some comedians recycle jokes.
Yeah.
And you probably heard a joke, you know, at another forum before from the same comedian.
Yeah.
And you don't laugh the same way you laughed at it the first time.
Yeah.
So how hard is it, you know, the work that you put into to, you know, get the jokes, like it's flowing like a river from you right now?
Okay. The best advice I've ever heard from any comedian was from Basket, not directly to me. He said it to somebody. You have to take this work like 9 to 5. As a stand-up comedian, you wake up in the morning, tune into channels, what is happening. You listen to the news, you watch the news, you have to pick something. So you understand, you have to be, it's work. You're as good as your last performance. And it's not the same people who watched you at your last place of performance are watching you now. So if you are not funny then, to them you're not funny. And you have to be on your toe. You are not like a musician that once you have a hit track, you can do it 8 places. You understand? At the point, it will be the audience that will be singing it for them. You understand? That's the one that used to pay me. I will go and pay for concert. I will be singing it. Why did I pay? You understand? So that's why comedy is different. You have to be working. It's work. Like for me as a person, I'm at comedy club Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Like I have to be in that space. There is an issue, I have to talk about it. There is this law of repetition for a comedian. If I keep talking about an issue, something will strike. Or I'm discussing it with my group of friends, and I'm talking with people who are not comedians, like just having a regular conversation. You will say one funny thing that you don't know that is funny. So as a comedian, I won't let you now.
You pick it.
I'll just pick it.
So you're very...
you have to be... you just pick it. I just pick it and I just keep quiet.
I want you to do something, Kaycee. You can tell us where we can find you, both online and offline. You talked about the comedy club, but I want you to speak something into existence. I know Nigeria has been able to create big comedy talents, but they say that the beautiful ones are not yet born. And I imagine that the even bigger ones are being grown right now. So who is Kaycee? How big a comedian would you be? Do you see yourself being? Is it for Africa, globally? I want you to speak into existence.
Okay, this is me, your next door stand-up comedian, touring the world, telling Nigerian and African story with my talent.
Where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram at comedian Kaycee CFR, on Facebook at Kaycee Comedian. That's it.
In person. If you want to touch and feel Kaycee, where do we find you?
Come to SLK's Comedy Club.
That's Kaycee CFR.
Yeah. SLK's Comedy Club, JJC, VI, Life Lounge, VI, on Fridays.
All right.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure they'll also find all of those on your social media platforms.
Yeah, thank you.
We are super proud of you and grateful that you could come. Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you on the bigger stage, perhaps the African continent, maybe even global.
Most definitely. Thank you so much.
And all the best with your house hunting.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, so thank you so much for being a part of the show today. Endeavor to laugh all through the day. You need it. We all need it. And we'll be back again tomorrow to give you another bumper harvest of the Morning Brief on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
Challenges will never go away. So if the freedom you seek is freedom from responsibility, you will never have it. So brace up and just find joy in anything you do. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeff Ruzama.
And we promise you that no house agent was harmed during this production. Okay? We still love you. I'm Kayode Kikilu. Sunrise Daily is next, so stay with us right here on Channels Television.